In this lesson, we'll briefly talk about using morph targets. So morph targets are going to be similar to layers in a few respects. They allow us to change our mesh from one to another based on the sculpted detail that we've created. So we can kind of go back and forth between two states. So to visualize this, we'll use our main subtool here. Let's, in our tool palette, go down to morph target. And the first thing we'll do is store the current state of our object. So we'll store a morph target. That'll bring up these values. We're going to leave these alone and concentrate on these. So what we want to do now that we've stored this is now we can make those changes to our model. So we can sculpt detail. For instance, in this case, I'm just going to pull out some little spikes here. So that's part of our second shape. So we can switch back and forth between the two shapes. Here's our initial shape. Here's our modified shape. So it's kind of a back and forth relationship. We can also morph between them by changing this morph slider. So if we have one selected, it'll morph to the other, and vice versa. Okay. If we want to delete it, we can delete it, but the current state that it's in, so right now we've got this one selected, so if we delete our morph target, it's going to delete that base shape that we created. If we switch and now delete it, it's going to get rid of the changes that we made. So it all depends on what you have selected. Okay. Now we also have the ability to use a brush to modulate this. So we actually have a morph target brush. So choose our morph brush, kind of a large draw size. And what this will do is when we paint over our mesh, and let me turn off RGB. When we paint over our mesh, it's going to allow us, it's going to basically paint in whatever's in that morph target. So we can come in here, and if we want to just bring it in a little bit, we can do that. And what that's doing is, just in those areas where I'm painting, it's saying, okay, in these areas, based on our focal shift, our draw size, our intensity, bring out the detail from that morph target that we have there. Okay. We can also, I'm just holding down Alt, you can push that back in. You can see that's actually going back into the surface. Okay. So it's like taking it like a negative value. So those can be useful, morph targets can be useful as well. And you can do those at lower levels if you want to keep your cage a certain shape. You can use morph targets also. Not as much flexibility as using layers, but you do have the ability to use this morph brush to paint in detail from your morph target. Okay, so that's a look at using morph targets really quickly. The next thing we want to do is use micro mesh. So micro mesh is a great way to add a lot of high resolution detail very quickly by replacing individual polygons with other models that we've created or that we've got somewhere. So in the next lesson, we'll take a look at using micro mesh to create kind of a great look for our little stand there. So we'll go ahead and do that next.